order. Board members, we have a quorum. We have 5 members present, and therefore we have a quorum. We've all had an opportunity to review the agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Dr. Luckett has moved and Mr. Figurs has seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any nays? There being none, the motion is gotten. The superintendent's report. Dr. Green.
You hear me?
I can.
Can you hear me?
Many JPS high school students may not be old enough to vote, but that did not prevent
With
them
our
from encouraging
video.
those who are old enough to register. The voter registration challenge provided students an opportunity to engage with their community while also giving them a chance to win money for their school's athletic programs. The winners of the challenge are Lanier High School, first place, $5,000, Callaway High School, second place, $2,500, and Provine High School, third place, winning $1,000. The drive was held in September. A total of 176 people registered to vote through the voter registration challenge. The event was sponsored by the Mississippi Black Women's Roundtable. Power APAC Elementary School will soon have a new name. A list of possible names for the change has been accepted by the school's renaming committee. Power APAC, the district's only academic and performing arts center, serves students in grades 4 through 12. The school is currently named for Confederate Colonel John Logan Power. Jackson Public Schools and William Carey University are partners. JPS and William Carey University signed the partnership during a recent ceremony. Participating in the signing event were Dr. Ben Burnett, Executive Vice President and Dean of Education at JPS and the university began the partnership to create the JPS Teacher Certification Program and to provide a pathway to certification for district employees who hold provisional licenses. Educators completing the program will commit to a 3-year teaching contract with the JPS district. JPS Superintendent Dr. Eric L. Green is one of 7 new members of the National Chiefs for Change. Chiefs for Change, a nonprofit, is a bipartisan network of diverse school leaders who are advocates for policies and practices that make a difference for students. The network's core beliefs are centered on the well-being of children, safe and welcoming schools, access to an excellent education, fully prepared and well-supported teachers, high-quality instructional materials, and reliable and affordable pathways to college and careers. One of the network's major initiatives is to cultivate education leaders who are committed to ensuring every child has access to quality schools. Collectively, network members serve more than 7 million students across the country. Jackson Public Schools, the Community Foundation for Mississippi, and the W.K. Kellogg Foundation recently announced their continued partnership to transform the public education system in Jackson, Mississippi. The W.K. Kellogg Foundation sealed its commitment with a 3-year, $3.5 million grant to the Community Foundation. The funds will support teacher and school leadership capacity building, as well as virtual learning and JPS. Teacher capacity building is prioritized in the district's 5-year strategic plan. Please read more about this partnership at our website. Unity Day is October 21st. It is the signature day of National Bullying Prevention Month. To participate in Unity Day, individuals, schools, communities, and businesses wear or display orange to show support for students who have been bullied. So let's show our support by wearing orange on October 21st. For more information about Jackson Public Schools, please visit our website. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Comcast channels 18 and 19.
As always, we'd like to thank the instructional television production team for their work in developing those videos to help keep us informed as to the latest highlights in our district. Enrollment and attendance data can help to drive improvement plans in our district and to help us achieve the vision for Jackson Public Schools. At this time, we'll welcome Executive Director of Data and Accountability, Dr. Nicole Charleston, to come and share some enrollment and attendance data for the district. Dr. Charleston.
Thank you, Dr. Green. Can you hear me? Okay. So great afternoon, great evening, everyone. As Dr. Green said, I'm here to present the district's data on enrollment, attendance, transfer out, etc. The purpose is just to provide you with some updates on student enrollment and attendance. Throughout this semester, even before the year started, we have implemented a very data-driven process in data and accountability. So we have been watching the numbers and tracking the numbers and using the data to make those mid-course adjustments throughout the year. So I'll share with you several slides, and I guess I'll start with talking about some of the national trends. As we know, this year looks very different than previous years, and that's not just for our district, that's for districts across the country. So as I've been reading the literature and just kind of seeing what other districts across the country are experiencing, you'll see that the headline remains the same throughout the country. This was an article that was on National Public Radio. Enrollment is dropping in public schools around the country. And this is a study where they're collecting the data at this point. So the final study hadn't been published yet, but you know, school districts around the country are experiencing what you'll see much of the same thing that we're experiencing this year. And just some of the districts that I've done some reading on to see whose enrollment has dropped 8, 10, 12%, St. Louis, Little Rock, Virginia, and the Metro Nashville area. There's some larger school districts, of course, you know, that are experiencing the same things, but these are school districts who are pretty comparable to us in size. Like JPS, they're still gathering preliminary data. And so in the coming months, they should have their enrollment figures finalized, submitted to the state, and we'll really be able to do some comparison to see how other districts, how they shake out. Again, as we look at our numbers, we will see different populations have been hit harder by this shift than others. There was a study conducted by the Washington Post that kind of talked about parents with children who are learning virtually. And the younger the children, the more impact it had on the parent and their ability to put them in kindergarten and definitely pre-K. So this article, another pandemic shift in many school districts, 1 in 10 kindergartners didn't show up. And so as we go through this, we can have some other conversations about it. But again, this is the national headline, and you'll see that we aren't exempt from this. So as it relates to enrollment, this is an enrollment breakdown by gender and then by learning option. You'll see that our total student population this year is 20,491. And then we have that broken down by elementary, middle school, and high school. At the bottom, you'll see we have the same enrollment breakdown, 20,491. And we have this broken down by learning options. So those students who are asynchronous versus those students who are synchronous. we have about 5,165 asynchronous learners and a little over 15,000 synchronous learners. The next few slides, it just breaks down enrollment by division. So you'll see this information. It's the 3 elementary divisions, the middle school and the high school. And these are just kind of ranked based on the highest annual percentage change. Depending on the size of the school, you know, you'll see that that percentage change may be pretty high. And so the first slide was, of course, Division 1, beginning with Power APAC. Again, that's a pretty small school, so any number will kind of inflate what that percentage change looks like. And it goes down to the last one, which is 43.4. I can't see what school that is because I believe that should be Bates. I can't see it, the wording is on there, but Bates. And so anything that you see in red, those are enrollment changes that were impacted by some type of district policy change. And so as you know, Bates got many of the students from Van Winkle, as Van Winkle was, it was turned to a pre-K center. And so that would have an impact on that 43% increase at Bates. The next slide, Leicester, starts with Leicester, goes down to Clausel. This is a division that did not have any enrollment changes that were impacted by policy changes. You'll see it goes from a negative 20% down to right at a negative 3%. And these are annual percentage changes. So although you see 18, 19, and 20, this is the percentage change from 19 to 20. And the last elementary division would be at the top. You'll see Van Winkle. And as you know, Van Winkle was repurposed as a pre-K center. And, you know, as I mentioned in the article, pre-K applications, we were really expecting a robust year with the pre-K centers. We had nearly 1,000 applications with parents interested in pre-K. And as we went through those, as we began to move to virtual, many parents determined that at this time, they basically needed childcare. And so what we did, we still have those applications and we're tracking those applications. And so we will revisit those, you know, as we begin to go back in schools. Many parents said that they would definitely be interested. So we definitely know that the interest is there. So again, we'll use those data and hold those applications and remain in contact with those parents. And so the next, middle school, of course, we know Cardozo and Blackburn. We would expect those enrollment increases as Cardozo got many of the students from Sowell, and Blackburn received those students from Hardy. So we would expect those increases. At the high school level, there weren't any schools that had policy changes, but you know, you'll see that Jim Hill did have an increase in their enrollment for the current year. And we think that's attributed to the IB program and much of the recruitment that was done last year to bring those students from Northwest to Jim Hill in that IB program. And so Jim Hill, again, the high schools didn't have any policy changes that impact their enrollment, but Jim Hill does show about a 3.65% increase in their enrollment for the current year. And so this basically just summarizes it across the board. You can see the annual percentage change from 19 to 20 by division. So elementary, middle school, and then high school. So now we'll look at 10-year enrollment data, and these data are not annual. These data this will be a running list. So this is a 10-year enrollment change. And so this year, that number from 10 years ago, from 2010 until now, the district's enrollment is down about 32.5%. And this is the piece of information that I added this year that I thought would be helpful as we talked about tracking students who are transferring out and kind of looking at where are those students going. And so the next slide kind of gives a big picture. Charter schools in the Jackson area, charter schools in Jackson, we had about 649 records requests. So I'll tell you where I pulled this data from, just to give you some context. When a student transfers to another school or another district, they request their records from the last school or the last district attended. And so we looked at records requests we had for the current year, which was 1,710. And then I just kind of analyzed where are these students going. So about 649 went to the charter schools. The next highest number was Rankin County schools, 145. Hines County schools, 133. Clinton Public Schools, 120. And then I broke out the Madison County schools. We know that, you know, both of these are part of Madison County schools, but Madison County schools located in Ridgeland, 99. And then Madison County schools located in the city of Madison, 43. And then the other 521 came from a combination of other places, private schools, schools out of state, and throughout the state, but just not in large numbers. These were the largest numbers of where we see that our students are actually going. I'll tell you the difference in this year's data and last year's data is that we have a lot of students that are transferring to the suburban areas, Rankin County, Clinton, Madison, and that's something a little different than what we've seen in previous years. The next piece is attendance. We've been in school about 40 days. So 40 days as of these data that are reported on here. So the attendance data that you see will be through October 9th, which gives us about 40 days of school. And so as we look at the numbers, just to give that some context, again, we've broken out this by division. So you'll see the 3 elementary divisions, the middle school, and then the high school. So students who've missed 5 days, 10 days, 12 days, 15 or more days. Okay. The same thing for group 2. And group 3. Middle school. And then high school. And so this slide breaks out the numbers that you've seen, all the numbers total together. I put all together and then just kind of gave an idea of which students make up the majority of the absence. And so synchronous learners across the board make up about 70% of this. and asynchronous learners make up roughly 30 to 33% of these students. So next steps, I think we kind of talked about some of the things that our next steps. So one of the things again would be on those pre-K students to continue to work with the pre-K office to monitor those applications, keep those parents in the loop who have expressed an interest in the pre-K program. As it relates to attendance, there are auto calls that go to parents when students are not in class. We will ensure that that continues to happen, and also work with school leaders to have school leaders contact parents when students are absent from class. We're working with the early warning system teams at the different schools to contact students and see what are some of the barriers to attending and logging in or returning their packets. Begin to locate students who were enrolled last year and did not return. We still have some students out there who've not enrolled for the year. We have parents every day that are coming to enroll their children in school for the current school year. And we're making sure that those students who are asynchronous learners, who are not logging on every day, we're making sure that they stay in the loop, that they stay connected. We have an attendance survey that goes out, and a great part of that survey is students are asked if they need assistance, with any assignments. And as they complete that survey, that information is forwarded to the school so that students can stay connected and get the assistance that they need. So, thank you. I'll take questions, comments at this time, if there are any.
Yeah, I have a question, Nicole. Very interesting report. And the students who are in the program at Tougaloo, are they accounted for in their home school? I know that each one of them is assigned a home school. So
Yes.
Are they accounted for in the numbers for their home schools?
Yes, ma'am, they are. That's exactly
Okay.
right.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I'll just add, board members, one of the things that Dr. Charleston mentioned was just the challenge of having the scholars who are learning asynchronously, getting the work packets, the instructional packets that they're completing, getting those turned back in, just the challenges and logistics surrounding that. I've heard just in the last few days of parents who weren't aware that they could actually send those packets back, bring those packets back to packets back to the bus stops where scholars are getting, they can get meals or they can get the packets themselves. So that's just one way that we're trying to assist and make it, less of a hassle for us to get those packets returned and corrected and get the feedback from teachers on those. And the team is continuing, the different school-based teams are continuing to work to reach out and to be in touch as much as possible with the parents and with the scholars to support them as they're learning asynchronously. And as we're waiting, again, I want to keep reminding us all, as we're waiting for the devices, additional devices to come in, to be shipped. Are there any other questions for Dr. Charleston?
Got just kind of a basic one about the attendance. It feels like we've got some pretty wide discrepancies at all levels of our schools between the high end and the low end. And I'm wondering if we've at least had some initial kind of analysis of what the schools that are on, particularly on the low end, what they're doing right and what the difference is, and how that can inform what's happening some of the schools on the other end of the spectrum. or if we even know that from the data we have.
Yes, so we do, and that's something we've kind of talked about. Dr. Cormick and I talked a week or so about conducting a pilot study where we will look at those schools who seem to be having some challenges, as well as those who are doing well, to look at them, to analyze, to see what are some of the best practices, and you know, and to kind of bring all of the schools up to speed. But we've talked about that, and I think we have a set of schools in mind to pilot at the elementary level. But yeah, we have definitely given that some thought and recognized that, Dr. Luckett, and you're exactly right. And so we do plan to look at that.
Thanks.
And not that it'll be the cure-all, but we do expect these numbers to be quite different in terms of attendance, at least, to be quite different once we're fully connected throughout the district. And that in and of itself will have its own set of challenges once everyone's connected. But at least the challenges of, again, to the asynchronous learners of ensuring that they're getting the daily instruction that they need, ensuring that we have a good accounting of their attendance and they get the feedback and all those things, and credit, frankly, for the work that they are doing on the instructional packets. That's at least a piece of it, though that's not all of it, we know.
Okay. Any more questions, comments? All right, thank you.
What I was saying is, as you engage in the pilot study, would really encourage you to look at population trends within the community around the schools. I appreciated the 10-year look back because it aligns with the census, and you know there are other factors at play, particularly when it comes to out migration and in migration, and there's not a one-to-one correlation between what's going on in the school and what and enrollment. Obviously, is part of it. It's an important factor. It may be a high correlation, but it's also, I think, important to put any findings within the broader context of the city.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Definitely. Yeah.
Absolutely agreed.
Yeah.
I have a question in regard to remediation. If it seems like lots of students are missing important data if they're away from school within the last 40 days for 15 days or more, and what the district's plan for remediation.
The question, I want to make sure that that we heard the question. The question was around the scholars who are away from school for 15 or more days. What is the plan for remediation for those scholars? Correct. I'm going to ask one of our assistant soups or Ms. Thomas to take that question.
Yes, are we, this is Dr. Murray, I'm sorry. Are we talking about students who are just absent from school?
Yes, sir.
Yes, well, most of our students, we are, of course, we have content in Canvas. We also have, you know, we've archived all of our information, and we have that information that we can provide for students. So students have, even though they're not in school, we can provide that content for them. I think some of the issues are is making connections with the students. The students that we're looking at here are those students who we just can't engage. And so once we engage the students, we do have mechanisms for providing makeup and support for them. But what we're doing now with dropout prevention, Mr. Terrell, all of our counselors, we're working to make sure we can make connections with those students so we can connect them with the content that we have.
And also, Ms. Johnson, just to add to that, schools are starting early warning system team meetings. And through those meetings, we identify students that may be off track because of attendance, behavior, or course performance. So for example, since you're talking about attendance, then those students are being flagged. And so what schools are doing now is are creating instructional plans for students. And that's part of what's written in our dropout prevention plan. And some of those plans may include small group remediation, parent meetings, supports that may be required. So for example, why are students missing these days? Are there any additional supports that may be needed? Are there students that may have a device and they're experiencing some issues with connectivity? So we're making sure that those students are getting hotspots that we have available. So it's meeting with those students based on the data and identifying a specific plan, not just an overall plan that everybody falls into, but specific things. What are the specific needs of each student that fall within these categories? And students that are right now, because we've only been in school right at about 2 months, if they are missing so many days, they're already flagged as an issue for attendance. And they're considered to be chronic absent.
Amanda Thomas, were you unmuting to add to that?
I was, yes, sir. Good evening, everyone. So, and I saw that Ms. Franklin mentioned in the chat our intervention program as well, Freckles. So basically, as Ms. Marsha Thomas was stating, those students have been targeted for remediation or supplemental instruction due to attendance, but it could also, we know that with attendance that they possibly are faring within the targeted range for skills and concepts as well. So we do have our Freckle intervention program. Our interventionists have a work plan in which they're communicating with parents, even if the students are not attending school. So we have the communication through school status, through other various modes of phone, communicating with the parents to make sure that they're making connections with them and that they're doing individual sessions or group sessions with the students to remediate those skills and concepts. So although this is a plan within 40 days, to have either targets with those skills and concepts. If that answers the question.
It does. Thank you very much. And we're quite
Okay.
familiar with Freckle at my house.
And that's just one of the intervention programs. That's our online platform. But we do realize that even with Freckles, we must have that offline instruction. And that's where the more individualized planning comes in from the interventionists, the school level interventionists, as well as the teachers.
And I'll just add, I appreciate the team weighing in on the several strategies and methods that we have of kind of knowing who the children are and addressing their individualized needs and not assuming that everyone is similarly situated and therefore needs the same kind of intervention or support. But on top of that, and I think this is not missed on this group, you know, the numbers that we're seeing of scholars who are missing days, multiple days is you know, more unique to the times in which we're living. And so as we get to a more stable face-to-face structure where we have eyes on and we're able to reach out and touch our scholars and families, the ability to understand their challenges, whatever they might be, social challenges or learning challenges or whatever it might be, we're in a better position to create plans that are in keeping with their needs and addressing those more directly. So just wanted to name that. Any further questions for Dr. Charleston or any of us with regard to this data here on enrollment and attendance? Of course, as we've already started to discuss this, all of this hangs right there together. The point of this whole conversation is because it does impact our scholars' performance and their abilities to achieve. So we appreciate your attendance too, and your attention to this presentation. Thank you, Dr. Charleston. At this point, board members, as you know, Jackson Public Schools, our current accreditation status is at probationary status, and that's based on and moving forward, I guess, based on the implementation of our corrective action plan, which was created to help us clear the deficiencies identified by the Mississippi Department of Education. While we've cleared several of the standards and substandards, we still obviously have some work to do to clear the rest of those standards. At this time, we'll ask our Assistant Superintendent of School Support, Dr. William Merritt, to join us and provide an update on the progress of clearing the rest of those standards that are noted in our corrective action plan. Dr. Merritt.
Thank you, Dr. Green. To Board President Johnson and Board of Trustees, to Dr. Green, I am here, of course, as Dr. Green stated, to give you an update on the corrective action plan, or as we know it as the CAP. The objective of my presentation today is to review the progress towards clearing standards and provide significant changes that have happened in the corrective action plan. As you are aware, the purpose of the accreditation standards is the standards provide what a district should do to be successful and to be compliant in areas of accreditation. If a district has any deficiencies, the accreditation is in jeopardy, and it could be downgraded, it could be withdrawn, or a state of emergency can be declared on a school district. So just to give you a historical perspective, there was a limited and an investigative audit conducted in September of 2016 through July of 2017. As a result of that investigative audit, the district was found non-compliant with 24 of the 32 process standards and accreditation policy 2.1. And as Dr. Green stated earlier, our current accreditation status is that of probation, and it was downgraded based on us being deficient in 24 of the 32 accreditation areas and accreditation policy 2.1. Next slide, please. Okay. So as a result, up until currently, we have cleared a total of 23 standards and substandards, and we will review that. We have, of course, we found non-compliant of 24 of 32, but some standards have multiple substandards under them, and so to date we have cleared 23 of 32, and we're aggressively working towards clearing all of the remaining standards. Just to give you a perspective, last year at this time, we had cleared a total of 18 total standards. And it's not quite a year yet, and we have cleared an additional 5 standards. And of course, there are some substandards that we have cleared as well, and we will review those. So for an example, Standard 17 has 7 components, and we will not clear that standard until we clear all components of that standard. But this year, we have cleared standard 17.3, which is career and technical education, or our CDC, our standard that's related to the Career Development Center. We have cleared standard 17.4, which is special education. And that's a very heavy standard, as it requires various federal and state law. Dr. Bingham and her team did a great job in addressing that standard. In addition to it was some specific students that were cited in that standard, and her team did well in addressing the issues associated with that. And as you can see, though, the standards that are outstanding with standard 17 are kindergarten, pre-K, and federal programs. Even still with those heavily weighted standards, we are still making great progress towards clearing all of the remaining standards. Of course, as we did on last year, we are showing what standards fall under the respective chiefs. And Dr. Cormack is fortunate to have a lot of the heavily weighted standards under his purview. And so you can see that those standards that are represented here. And communication with the State Department, if we look at standard 1.1, which includes standard 1.1, 1.2, and standard 1.3, which deals with the board and superintendent and governance, basically, we were informed when we clear all standards, that standard will automatically clear. Standards 6 and 8 are pretty much grouped together as they relate to records. And then Dr. Charleston previously presented on attendance, which is standard 10. And of course, we have federal programs, which is a cross-functional standard that's associated with property and accounting as well. Under the Chief Operating Officer, we do have standard 30. It's two standards that remain on record, which is our standard 30 and standard 31. These standards are interrelated. In visiting with Mr. Albright and Ms. Robinson, we do have some additional schools that are ready for clearance related to standard 30. Of course, a lot of these projects that are in standard 30 are associated with the bond issue. And once those projects are complete, we should be able to clear standard 30. A standard that we have made significant strides in is those standards under the Chief Academic Officer. This year, we have cleared standard 11, which includes our dropout prevention plan, standard 20, which is a very heavily weighted standard that deals with not only having an instructional management system, but the implementation of the instructional management system, as well as our multi-tiered systems of support. I think that was also largely associated with our district moving from F to D and just showing progress with our academic, in the area of academics. Also, standard 22 that dealt with alternative education. Kudos to Ms. Tanya Tamika Mason, who is principal at Capital City. This was a cross-functional standard that dealt with exceptional ed and as well as schools. And she really worked hard and aggressively to clear that standard. And she did it in less than a year. And so a great job in clearing that. Also, we have cleared standard 26, which is the secondary curriculum, and standard 27, which is the activity-based curriculum. And Dr. Smith did well and presenting and coordinating the efforts to clear that standard. So we, in our area of academics, we have been making strides to address those deficiencies, and we are clearing them, and that's something to celebrate with the team. So currently, standards that MDE are reviewing. One, they are reviewing accreditation and graduation records. And under standard 14, there are about 6 substandards. So we're hoping that we will clear this standard. They are working with our lead counselor to make suggestions if some things are found and how we can correct them. But it is a coordinated effort with the team in working with this standard. Also, with standard 17.6, which is federal programs, they will come November 30th through December 4th. And this will be somewhat of a virtual visit, but they will review our fiscal information or budgets with federal programs. They will look at our Title I, McKinney-Vento program, and as well as our EL program and equipment. And really the major part of this audit will be the equipment component, which will be done virtually, but they will be looking for equipment in buildings. And of course, standard 30, we have presented a request for clearance for that for Van Winkle. So key takeaways from this presentation is, one, we want to inform you that we are making significant progress in addressing these standards. Again, this is a lot of these standards are cross-functional in nature, and that they involve various departments. And again, Dr. Green has been very clear of his expectations, and so we are operating with a sense of urgency to make sure that we address all of these standards to ensure that we have our accreditation restored. We are in conversation with the department to see, how many more standards must we clear, or is it an all or none thing in order for us to receive our full accreditation. As stated earlier, each chief is aware of their standards that they must address in order for us to become, to remove all of the deficiencies that are on record. And so we are working, again, as a team with a sense of urgency to address all of the non-compliant areas. And I believe this concludes the presentation. If there are any questions, I will entertain them at this time.
Board members, questions? Dr. Merritt?
I overlooked it. I did call Ms. Amanda Thomas' name, who worked hard and with the MTSS, the multi-tiered systems of support, which is associated with standard 20.2. So I do want to give her credit as well, and her support in helping clear that area, that standard.
All right, board members, any questions?
I have a question. Dr. Merritt, is there a specific time frame that all of this has to be done before we can get off the probation status?
Great question, Ms. Hilliard. We should work hard to make progress, and we hope we begin each year with an effort to clear all standards. So that is the goal, although it doesn't necessarily happen, but each year we start with a plan to clear all standards by the end of the school year.
Mm-hmm. But in terms of what MDE requires, they don't have a set time frame as such.
Well,
it's left up to us when we want to come off probation, I guess is what I'm saying. Is that right?
Well, it is their goal that we clear them within an academic school year. But they are aware of the number of standards that we are trying to clear. And I don't know if that's the reality for us to do it within a year, but we are working hard to do so. I also want to note on standards 6 and 8 that deal with records. Dr. Charleston and her team did a lot of work, several months of work in that area, and we were prepared to request clearance on several of those standards. And the pandemic occurred, and so that knocked us off. So some of that, the pandemic did impact us in clearing some standards. And then Dr. Cormack has reviewed in several board meetings that there are some things that were waived, but the pandemic did impact us in clearing some of the standards as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Merritt, of the remaining standards, which ones are the most important for student achievement? And then I have one other question after that one.
Okay, if we go back to the slide with all of them, the ones under the chief academic officer, thank you. All of those standards are very important and associated with student achievement. Of course, we have pre-K and kindergarten remaining on there. And so those things are very important in terms of academics. And again, as you're able to see, we're making great strides in that area to address some of the challenging standards that I see. If we go to the ones of the chief of staff, the Accreditation Policy 2.1 is a very challenging standard for a district of our size because it deals with data quality, and several of us will be participating in a training on Friday to deal with this. This is another cross-cutting and cross-functional standard that deals with several departments: human resources, data and accountability, federal programs. And so some of these standards are really, and aligning the work can be a challenge, but we are working as a team to address them.
Thank you.
We go back to the slide with Chief Academic Officer, those standards. Right. So Dr. Merritt mentioned this earlier, but I think it bears restating. Standards 20, 20.1, 20.2, that is really the meat of our instructional program here in the district. And you might recall from previous reports or a couple of years ago, like this is one that the team has been working through for quite some time. It's ensuring, one, that we have a clear instructional plan, instructional management system, but the plan established, approved by the board, and that we're implementing it. And so when the team from MDE goes out and monitors, that they see evidence of that plan being implemented consistently throughout the district. And that includes all the materials that we're using, curricular materials, and of course, the multi-tiered systems of support as is noted here. So, you know, while it was mentioned before, I think it bears restating. And again, to your question, Dr. Sivak, you know, that's the meat of our instructional program. And thankfully, we've been able to demonstrate a level of success, excellence, proficiency in that area to have that standard cleared. And then of course, now it's continuing to work the plan. And that's frankly, for all of these standards, continuing to do the things that were cited and allowed us to get them cleared so that they don't become an issue down the road. But those are some of the biggies there. As you see them, and others obviously super important, but you know, excited that standard 20 in particular was one that we've been able to clear because it was such a lift. I will also say that, and again, appreciate Dr. Merritt serving as quarterback over the years, few years at least, in this work. You know, board members, we're anxious to get all of these standards cleared. Absolutely anxious. While we see and we're excited and even appreciate from MDE, our friends over at Mississippi Department of Education, the acknowledgement of progress that we've shown. The reality is there isn't kind of probationary and very probationary. It's probationary, and we're tired of that status. And our team is given the capacity that we've developed and the way that we've demonstrated progress over time, we're ready to clear these out. There's the fixing of systems, there's the fixing of records over time, and there's the ongoing day-to-day performance. And while we're demonstrating the, we've got a new system in place in a lot of these areas, and we've got people behaving and performing in ways that are consistent with the new system and new sets of expectations. The reality is there's still quite a bit of cleanup with records. And I know the team is struggling through that, trying to do today's work and cleaning up what needed to be cleaned up from the past. And so just want to name that people are definitely working really hard, and we know that that's not good enough, frankly. And that's no disrespect to all of the smart people in JPS doing really great work. Working hard is just not good enough. And so we are working with a sense of urgency to get this cleared. I'm frankly tired of reporting on this and excited to get to the place where this is not our report, where we can talk solely about what kids are learning and how we can show evidence of that. So we appreciate your patience with us as we definitely are showing progress, and we are excited to move to the place where this is a thing of the past for us. Amen, Dr. Merritt.
Amen.
Any other questions with regard to the corrective action plan, board members? As always, thank you, Dr. Merritt. Appreciate your leadership in this work, and kind of, as I've said, quarterbacking and supporting across teams to do this really important work. I believe I do have sharing privileges. I will take the controls now. Yes. So board members, we and to other community members and team members who are listening in to the meeting this evening, we in Jackson Public Schools have been very anxious to gather additional data, insights on the learning experiences of our scholars, of our team members, of parents over the last several weeks that we've been in school and in this virtual mode. And so we established a fall learning experience survey that we have implemented over the last, I believe, about 2.5 weeks, right at 3 weeks. The survey, just as an overview, the survey has several domains, including wellness, student learning, connectedness and support, access, communications, and expectations, and then even time allocation. And so there were questions around each of those. The survey was administered to scholars, to family members, and to staff members, and that's teachers and school leaders, as well as central office folks. In terms of participation, frankly, we weren't exactly proud or pleased with the level of participation, but we understand that this is an area where we simply have more work to do. We've got to build a muscle of completing surveys, sharing the survey data, and demonstrating to folks that the information that we gather through these surveys, that we actually use them to make smarter decisions and to pivot where we need to. But you can see here on the slide the participation rates by stakeholder groups. I should note that the scholar or the student participation is largely or more skewed towards our secondary scholars, where we saw more of them participating and completing the survey. Obviously, we would like to see many more of our scholars, many more of our parents and guardians completing them. We're very pleased with the number of teachers who completed the survey. Of the 13, 14 or so 100 teachers that we have within the district, and of our school leaders, the percentages of those stakeholder groups are pretty high. So we're pleased with those. And we'll be working, as I said, to ensure that we get greater participation in these surveys going forward. And part of that obviously is in showing folks that we take these responses seriously and that we use them to inform decisions going forward. A couple of the bright spots to share from the survey. One, about 80% of the scholars who responded indicated that they easily participate in their live online classes and turn in completed assignments. So again, we've already talked through that about 75% or so of our scholars are connected and learning virtually and or synchronously, and others the other 25 or so percent asynchronously. And so again, based on those numbers, and then again, based on the numbers of those scholars who responded to the survey here, this is a decent indication that of those learning synchronously, that they're finding their groove in this virtual world. Also, over 70% of our parents and guardians indicated that their children can easily participate in the online classes and submit their class assignments. Again, we assume that this is skewed towards those who are learning synchronously, but we know that early on, we've gotten several reports of questions and calls into the central office, the superintendent's office, other offices within central office, and certainly to the schools about connectivity and navigating some of the systems in that. So we see this as a bright spot, that there's some level of kind of normalcy that we found in this virtual world. Also, before we get to any level of student achievement, we've got to make sure that the instruction and these instructional leadership and all of the inputs, quote unquote, into the learning experience, that those are solid. And so we're pleased to see and to hear from teachers and school leaders that quite a large percentage of them, of our school leaders, feel like they can provide the level of feedback and that is necessary to ensure that teachers have the supports that they need, to ensure that we have a clear line of sight to what's happening in our classrooms and can give feedback and troubleshoot and all those things that need to happen. And while less so with teachers, still there's a strong sense that that teachers feel connected to the broad action and necessary to ensure their continued growth. And these are the kinds of things that we'd want to see in the district as we continue our climb towards a level of effectiveness in the daily instructional practices. Into other trends that we've seen in terms of the content that's being taught, you might recall early on in the year, or maybe even over the summer, there was where there was some discussion about how to pick up in the fall. Do you spend a month or a quarter making up the fourth quarter from last school year, or do you dive into new content? And so we see here that there's some discrepancy and some difference in of how teachers and school leaders are seeing the content that's being delivered or has been delivered, at least to this point, in schools. What we know for sure is that if we only focus on trying to quote unquote make up for the fourth quarter or fourth term of last school year will always be behind. And so the greater science and research says that you focus on new skills and then in a really intuitive and thoughtful way weave in many lessons for those skills and concepts perhaps that might be gaps for our scholars. That's really difficult work though. That's not, you can say it fairly simply, but it's not a simple proposition. And so this data here really just kind of speaks to the kind of the challenges of teaching the kind of old content or content from the last school year, as well as the new content that scholars need to know and will be tested on and held accountable for this year. So that's really what this data here shows, and just shows that we, like others, are grappling with that. And we'll have to continue to grapple and accelerate the new content that's being taught. And not obviously, but I should also say here, because we're maybe coming up on the conclusion of or in the middle of our benchmark assessments, that data will be very helpful in kind of helping to inform where we go next with teaching new content and any reteaching that might need to happen from old content. Also, board members, you know, we've talked over time about mental health and challenges or concerns around mental health, and that's for our scholars and for their families, but also for our staff members. And so one of the questions in the survey had to do with mental health supports. And, you know, it's not surprising, but, you know, still concerning that a number of our more than half of our parents and guardians feel that that only about half or just over half of our parents and guardians feel that that the district is providing adequate mental health support for students and for staff. And about the same for teachers and a little less for our school leaders. So clearly there's more unpacking that needs to happen here. I think for all of us, there's some level setting on what is appropriate or even possible given our constraints and the time that we have with scholars and with staff and that. What's appropriate for the district to provide versus what we might provide through our partners and community-based organizations and other resources that are out there. But very important for us to know that there's you know, across stakeholder groups, our parents, teachers, and school leaders, there's the view that the district could do a bit more, quite a bit more to support the mental health of our students and our staff. So, you know, just in terms of next steps, one, as I said before, we know that we've got to build a muscle around survey taking and gathering that information and analyzing it and doing something with it. So one of the things that we'll be doing coming out of this survey, I know it's a fairly brief survey, but one of the things that we'll be doing is sharing it more broadly with stakeholder groups within the JPS community, because we do know that matters. People want to know that they were heard and that you've gleaned something from the data that was collected. And people want to know where their responses, how those lined up with other responses of their stakeholder groups or other stakeholder groups. We will be doing 3 to 4 progress monitoring cycles with the survey. And so identifying representative schools throughout the district to give follow-up surveys, brief surveys, just to see, hey, so how are things going, and see if there's any movement on the perceptions or the you know, feelings that or responses from folks on those various indicator or domains over the next few months. We'll also be tiering the strategies to benchmark and compare some of the results. And so just want to make sure that we're thoughtful about what sense we're making from this and how we go forward with the strategies, because we don't want to take on a ton of new strategies to try to fix things, but to try to make some smart decisions on what might be most appropriate to address some of those needs. And again, prioritizing is the point here. I want to pause. I moved fairly quickly through this. There's more of the data in the survey that we'll be happy to share with various stakeholder groups, and so folks will know what was asked and what the responses were. We are looking forward to more participation, and we'll take some strategies or implement some strategies to get more responses to the surveys going forward. But let me pause and see if there are any questions from you board members.
Dr. Green.
Yes, ma'am.
I like this survey. I think it's something that's really needed. I have a question. How will you choose those who will be involved in the progress monitoring cycle?
Oh, you asked the best questions, Mrs. Hilliard. So the smart people, and we're working with the New Teacher Project, the TNTP. They've created the survey itself, and along with our guidance, and have kind of led us through this process and through the analysis, and even through selecting of schools going forward to participate in the progress monitoring. As we look across the district and look at performance levels and types of schools, even whether it's elementary, middle, high school, schools start to fall into different clusters. And so the TNTP team is helping us to identify schools that are representative of those clusters. Higher performing schools, specialty schools, high schools, middle schools, elementary schools, schools in North versus South versus East versus West or Central, Jackson, all of those different cuts. We want to make sure that those representations continue as we gather data going forward. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
So that's the smart people helping us to do that kind of work. It makes sense to me, but that's not my strong suit. So,
Thank you.
Any other questions, board members? Awesome. Well, as I said, this information, really excited to get this. I think for several of us, it's caused us to just want more, want more data. And so we'll continue with that. I've got, let me see here. Do I still have sharing? Yeah. Gonna move on to, oops. There we are. Okay, board members. So obviously, as you saw in that survey, data, we've been collecting some information with regard to social and emotional learning and mental health supports and experiences of our scholars and others in our community. We've also just been, living in the world and paying attention to what's happening, and we know that we've had some really unfortunate circumstances and incidents that have occurred over the last few months, and so we're paying attention and we're listening, and we know that this is a real issue for the mental health is a real issue for all of us, and we're trying to address those needs in several ways, and so I want to give you just a little bit of information on this. Trying to address those needs, our counselors are developing lessons that incorporate core competencies of self-awareness and social awareness, relationship skills, self-management, responsible decision-making, all of that into lessons that are taught in our classes. Our teachers then deliver those lessons during the morning meeting or the homeroom time period, typically at the start of the day. During this time, students will engage in open dialogue with their teachers and their peers about their emotions as they relate to various scenarios that are provided to prompt the discussion. Our scholars who express any anxieties or excessive tension or any of that are then referred to our school counselors for further support. And if necessary, scholars will speak with a counselor immediately. So in the moment, if something comes up in those advisory or homeroom times that is kind of sparks some concern for the teacher, then they could very easily have the counselors to connect with the scholars and talk with them and get some additional information. Those scholars who continue to express concerns are then referred to an outside agency like Marion Counseling Services for our 6th through 12th graders, or Hines Behavioral Health Systems for our K through 5th graders. Parental consent is obtained and an assessment is conducted to determine if what the child's needs are and if continued supports are necessary. Through our ongoing partnership with Marion Consulting Services, they provide training to our JPS staff members about the importance of mental health services and even the various services that they offer. And those services are also offered to our staff members. Jackson Public Schools also has an employee assistance program that provides 3 free counseling sessions for our staff members and or for their family members. And these confidential sessions are provided again through the Marion Counseling Services. In addition, Hines Behavioral Health Systems is providing Jim Hill High School staff members with some additional training in that regarding risk factors and warning signs of suicidal thoughts, as well as self-care and coping strategies for adults. Now they're providing that for Jim Hill right now because of specific concerns there. But as we identify those kinds of needs, they can be provided to our team members at other school sites. Our partners at the Mississippi Department of Mental Health have provided additional resources to our counseling staff, including a toolkit for leading conversations with our scholars after a crisis incident. And so whenever we have an incident of ideations of suicide or worse, a scholar committing or attempting suicide, then there's a whole body of supports that we can then pull down through our counselors and our relationships with outside entities. 2 elementary schools this year they've received a grant through the Mississippi Department of Mental Health to pilot social and emotional learning curriculum. And that's happening this year. And so we're excited about that and excited to learn from those experiences and determine what we might do to continue to build out our programming throughout the district. Our staff continue to receive professional development on social and emotional learning, on trauma, culturally responsive teaching, all of those in an effort to better communicate with, identify any needs, and support our scholars in managing their own emotional needs and emotional situation. In addition, and this is kind of late breaking, but the Working Together Jackson is launching a Safe Haven campaign. And one of the components of that campaign is to create a warm line for JPS families to call in with any concerns that they might have around emotional or mental health needs. This is in partnership with the Mississippi Suicide Crisis Line, and it's an existing line that will be utilized for JPS families only. Starting tomorrow, that's October the 21st, the hours of operation will be from 12 until 8 p.m., 7 days a week. And that line will be operated by trained and licensed counselors. And so we're very much so indebted to and appreciative of Working Together Jackson and their efforts to create yet another opportunity for our families and for our scholars to be happy and whole and to be taken care of. And so again, because this whole issue of mental health, and certainly during the pandemic and all of the stressors that exist within the community, conversations around crime and loss and just all of that, we know that people are stressing. We know that people feel increased anxiety. And so we just wanted to share some of the resources that we have within the district and the partners that we have around us to help us to deal with what exists now and to continue to be aware of how we can support our scholars. I'll pause there to see if there are any questions specific to mental health and social emotional learning.
Dr. Green, what is your sense of, I guess, at multiple levels, amongst the teachers? How, you know, there was the data that showed 1 out of 2 teachers roughly doesn't feel like they're getting what they need by way of mental health support. You know, what is your sense of what does that look like translated on the ground? And I guess I just, you know, so how does that look like? This is obviously a plan of how we're responding as a district. You know, I just want to get a sense of your sense as the lead teacher. You know, how are our teachers doing? How are our school leaders doing? And how is our response different this year than any other year? And I guess I'd ask that same question about the students as well.
I'll start with a response, and then I'll ask Ms. Amanda Thomas to chime in with anything more. And there may be other team members who have additional information to share. So I am not convinced that all of our scholars, our team members, or our parents are aware of the resources that we do have. I'm not convinced of that. And so we know that we've got to do more to share the access that we already have to resources. Two, you know, the reality is in many of our classrooms, well, in our classrooms, in our district, in many of our communities, the role of the teacher and the school leader and the counselor and the main office attendant and security guards and all of the folks in our school communities, the role that we play in looking at and monitoring and checking in, even briefly, with scholars as to how they're doing each and every day is different from what you might see in some other places where perhaps there aren't some of the stresses that we have in our community, kind of broadly spoken, broadly stated. And so we know that, you know, the work that we have to do to really build a strong set of skills and look fors and ability to see potential stressors and young people in crisis and family members and colleagues in crisis, my sense is that that's a bit different. Right. And so what we're doing is working towards, as I mentioned earlier, building our increased capacity throughout the district to do some of the preventative things that will help young people to feel a sense of belonging, a sense of safety. There's someone who knows your name. There's someone who knows something about you and can sense when you're feeling or you seem a little bit off, and can kind of check in with you offline to see if there's something more to that. That's generally the role of educators anyway. My point is that I believe that there's a greater sense of it in our district, just given some of what we experience throughout the city. So there's that. So there's additional awareness of the resources that exist. That there's the increased need for all of us to more readily sense a potential crisis or a kid who might be in crisis, and connecting them with the counselor, and counselors connecting them and their families with some of the resources that exist. So, you know, all of that exists. And just, I'm not so sure that we as a system are completely where we need to be in making all of those connections where they're needed and where possible. Because I generally am aware that in the state and in the city, resources around mental health and that are not necessarily where I don't think any of us would want them to be. I think there's an assumption that we're just kind of working without some of the resources that are needed. We take to heart the kind of data that we got through that survey, that where folks feel like we the district are not doing enough around this. I would argue that there's probably some differences in opinion as to what the district school system should and could be doing in the time that we have with young people versus some of the wraparound services that we should make or could make more readily available to our scholars and families. I want to pause here and see if there's more that Ms. Amanda Thomas might share with regard to, and I think the question was really on kind of where are we and how are people feeling about this, about resourcing or needs. Ms. Thomas, I don't see you.
Good evening. I'm still here. I'm still present. Yes, sir. So Dr. Sivak, as Dr. Green, you stated it so eloquently. We're in the phase of trying to be more proactive and not reactive in the crisis management of it. So what we're trying to do is to provide professional development for our staff so that they can recognize signs, and not just signs in students, but also with their colleagues, because we do realize that staff members are having quite a bit of anxiety. And of course, with this day and time of our pandemic, it's just caused more of the stress and anxiety. And so with our partners that we have, not only with mental health, but on the professional standpoint of the professional development and PD that they're providing, with us being able to identify trauma and different signs. We're just at a point where, as Dr. Green said, we're not there quite yet, but we're getting there as we get just more professional development and assistance from partners.
Yeah, I think this is a question for us to keep coming back to, just kind of how are people. So there's the, you know, what is happening, what resources do we have, and, you know, is there ever a time where a child is in crisis and we can't connect them to a resource, or someone doesn't see that they're in crisis in order to connect them to. So there's that, the lived experience, and there's the perception of what's happening. We want to make sure that we're addressing both of those, ensuring that, you know, we're catching and identifying anyone who might be in crisis or on the road to crisis. And we want to address the perception that if something is happening, you know, there are resources to draw down in that. And right now it's just kind of hard to kind of pull apart what is actually happening versus how people feel about what's happening. In the end, we want folks to feel safe. We want and need folks, little folks and grown-up folks, to feel like if they happen to be in a crisis, that somebody is there to help. But we want to keep stressing the importance of creating environments where folks feel safe. Safe to be, safe to learn, to make mistakes, but also safe to come and say, hey, I'm not okay. I need help. And all of that is hugely, hugely important and can't be overstated. I want to make sure there's not kind of something big that I'm missing with regard to this. Team members, anyone quickly, anything additional that you want to add to this conversation?
I just wanted to add, Dr. Green, Dr. Seeback, that our principals are cognizant of the fact that, they could experience third-degree trauma as a part of, dealing with the students and then the staff and then, themselves and the role that they have. So as assistant soups, we definitely design, monthly activities, to just kind of check in addition to the check-ins we do on a regular basis, but specifically design it for social emotional check-ins. And likewise, our principals do the same. Our principals do the same for the teachers. Hey, this is not a professional development that focus on academics. This is about, hey, how is everybody doing? And I'm just checking in. So like Amanda Thomas mentioned, we're focused now more on being proactive instead of reactive, now that we kind of have a sense of what to expect.
Thank you, Dr. Grigsby. There was something in your face that said she had something else really important to share. So thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, again, can't be overstated the work that we're doing with our leaders as well to ensure that they're okay as they lead through the day-to-day, let alone the really unfortunate incidents that sometimes, fall in our school communities. If there are no other questions, this is a great segue to talking about our leaders. So, am I still off mute? Yeah. So I don't know how many of you know, but each October, we celebrate school principals in this country for the essential role that they play in making schools great. JPS has wonderful principals and leaders who work tirelessly to support our schools. Strong schools have creative principals that are innovative, instructional leaders, and who build positive teams by supporting their teachers in positive and respectful environments. National Principals Month is a way of honoring their dedication and thanking them for all that they do each and every day. I want to personally thank all of our wonderful, amazing, talented, committed, caring, selfless school leaders, and all of them. And I want to take a few minutes just to call out a few of them in particular. First, just want to remind everyone that we do have an amazing Principal of the Year in the person of Vicki Conley. Vicki Conley began her career in education as a fourth grade teacher. I taught fourth grade for a minute, just a minute. Teacher in Greenwood, Mississippi. Under her leadership at Dawson Elementary School, the school improved from an F to a B rating on the state accountability system, which is huge. Mrs. Conley works hard to involve the community, partners, and parents in all of the initiatives that promote achievement, growth, and confidence in the scholars at Dawson. And so we celebrate her, the amazing Vicki Conley. And she's such a quiet storm, y'all. I don't know, if you don't know her, if you sat in a room with her, you might wonder if she's got the chutzpah or whatever you want to call it to really get in there and shake it up. But listen, she's a force. Talk softly. Can celebrate our longest tenured principal in the district, and that's Wanda Kwan, for a total of 36 years in Jackson Public Schools. Mrs. Kwan has served as a teacher, as an assistant principal, and then for 24 years as a principal at Pecan Park Elementary School. As principal of Pecan Park, she led her school from a D to a B rating on the state accountability system. And because of her focus on health and fitness, Pecan Park was the first Jackson Public School to be visited by former First Lady Michelle Obama. She too, just a force to be reckoned with. Such a sweet lady, but she don't play. And I think everybody knows. She'll say it softly and she means what she says. Kudos to Wanda Kwan, our longest tenured principal. As well, we always want to celebrate our new principals. There's something about that first year leading a school that is just unlike any other. And I think I've said to all of them, please, 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 you want to take the time and keep a journal, because you will look back on this year and laugh and cry and shake your head and some more things. So, and certainly to be a first year principal in the age of this pandemic is something to be said about that. But we celebrate all of our new principals this year. That's Antonius Caldwell, who's at Henley Young, Dr. Eric Cook at the Career Development Center, Sharikia Dixon at McLeod, Terrence Hill at Green Elementary, Tantanisha Houston at Sykes, Ruthie Johnson at Kirksey Middle School, Dr. Anthony Moore at Casey Elementary, and Sharon Terrell at Chastain Middle School. Kudos and a big old thank you to all of our new principals who are either joining us for the first time or are new at our leading a school here in JPS. And then in addition to supporting our new principals, just support across the board for all of our principals. In addition to their supervisors, we have principal coaches. And so throughout our district, we have several principals who have been tapped to serve as peer mentors, as leaders, as thought partners, just to ensure that across the board, we're sharing the best practices, supporting one another in leading in our different contexts. And so a big old thank you to Donald Boyd, to Lacey Bridges, Alvinette Buchanan, Vicki Conley, Shanela Evans, Lynn Horton, Marvin Greer, and Cynthia Beals, all of whom serve as principal coaches in Jackson Public Schools. And they, this year, they're really earning their keep as they lead some of the work in development for our assistant principals. I'm trying to bring up this chat because somebody is trying to chat me. Just want to make sure I'm not missing anyone. I see you, Dr. Grigsby. Are we okay? Okay. Okay, thank you. I could see your face, and so just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anyone in those lists because that would be horrible. So again, board members, wanted to spend this time and shout out all of our principals throughout JPS, and to call out a few of the principals, whether they're brand new principals in the role this year, principal coaches, and for sure our principal of the year and Wanda Kwan, who served for 24 years at Pecan Park. We just appreciate all of those who are leading schools, and we know that this is a tough time to be leading schools, but we appreciate you. We appreciate all the work that you're doing and the accountability that you willingly accept for ensuring that your schools are top-notch. And we know that we in JPS will never get to the level of success that we're reaching towards without you and without your leadership.
Dr. Green.
Let me make sure. Yes, with that, President Johnson, I'm going to stop sharing and turn the, oh shucks, yeah, I did have a note here. Oh geez. So my list is incomplete. I'm so sorry. I have to shout out, y'all, please forgive me. I have to shout out a couple more principals. Joseph Collins is at Boyd Elementary, and he's in his first year, and He too is just doing wonderful work there. Thank you, Mr. Collins. He's gonna beat me up later. Dr. Chantel Richardson is our new leader at Van Winkle, our pre-K center. And thank you. And she's joined us here in JPS, actually moved back to Jackson to take on this role. And so we're super, super glad that she's working in that capacity. And Ms. Lisa Haddon is the new principal at Oak Forest. And she was at Johnson last year, did a rock star job there, and is just continuing to lead and support us there. I believe I did mention Tantanisha Houston to add Sykes. So, okay, y'all know Dr. Green's memory ain't what it used to be. And clearly my team doesn't love me because somebody else gave me this list. I won't call them out right now. But we love all of our school leaders. Please forgive me for missing some of our first year principals. Y'all are amazing. You're doing great work. And we just thank you for all that you're doing, have done, and will do to serve children and families. With that, I'll turn it back over. I'm gonna get beaten up later.
Thank you, Dr. Green. And congratulations to all the principals in the district. Rosalind has indicated that we do not have participants for public comment. Community members who would like to make public comment should email their requests to ros.williams@jackson.k12.ms.us no later than 5:15 p.m. or log into the Zoom meeting between 5 and 5:15 to indicate their desire to comment. Now, board members, we are moving on to information items only, and it is board reports time. Board members, are there any members that are going to present a report tonight? All right, Dr. Sivak.
Thank you, President Johnson. Just very briefly, two quick updates from the Finance Committee. It's been a few weeks since we met, but there are two items that just want to make people aware of. One is on our consent agenda for finance tonight. We're very excited about the refunding of a general obligation bond, which will net the district approximately $400,000. So just wanted to thank Ms. Miller and her team for the work done on that. Those resources will be used for capital improvements, one-time costs for the district. So again, excited about this opportunity, and that is on our agenda tonight for approval. The other work that is underway that Ms. Miller and her team are undertaking is around the tax anticipation note. This is obviously a finance tool that we use every year to bridge the gap to when the property tax collections come in. There are going to be a couple new people working on it this year. So again, just appreciate the work of Ms. Miller and her team to both build the capacity of the district to do that over the long term, but also to bring in the people this year needed to make it happen. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes, ma'am.
I have an announcement that I would like to make as a part of the report, I suppose. Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Okay. Well, I would like to report that it's a part of the Council of Great City Schools organization, and the meetings, the annual meeting that took place last week. We did have a student from Jackson who was chosen to participate in the town hall meeting that focused on race and social justice. She joined 9 other students from various districts throughout the country, Omaha, Fresno, Philadelphia, Palm Beach, Boston, Charlotte, Mecklenburg, Cincinnati, Long Beach, and Portland. She did an excellent job. The student whom I refer to is Tyra Patterson, who is a senior at Jim Hill High School. So we're proud that she represented the district quite well. And of course, as a member of that group, we'll be looking for other instances where we can showcase the district. And thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hilliard. Board members, any other reports? There being none, we will move on with the agenda. Attorney Robinson.
Good evening, members of the board, JPS employees, and members of the Jackson community. The Office of the General Counsel recommends that the board support a memorandum of understanding between the district and MedCorps in providing telephone nurse triage services to assist injured on-the-job employees to reduce the lag time between the occurrence of an on-the-job injury and the reporting of said injury. Based on an analysis contained in the district's workers' compensation report provided by the district's insurance consultants, the South Group, in 2019, our current lag time analysis reflects that 80% of our reports of injuries are reported 24 days after the injury occurs. The best practice with respect to workers' compensation injuries is that those reports are received within 4 days of the injury's occurrence. Because of that analysis and the report that was provided to the district, our insurance consultants recommended MedCorps as a possible option to help alleviate the lag time that is occurring between the reports and when the injury occurs, which will hopefully reduce the cost and encourage employees to be able to come back to work in a shorter time frame. One of the questions related to how this relates to student outcomes was posed, and plainly stated, if it relates to student outcomes in two ways. First, the availability of immediate resources to assess the injury and determine the best treatment following an evidence-based medical protocol will help to reduce that lag time between reporting of an injury and the treatment of the injury. As I've mentioned, best practices in the workers' compensation industry suggest that this reduction in lag time can result in shorter treatment timeframes, which means employees can return to work sooner. Secondly, student outcomes will be positively impacted by the reduction of the number of days when substitute teachers, particularly when we're talking about classroom-based injuries, are required to be available when injured teachers are out due to workers' compensation related issues. The cost associated with this contract, there would be an initial setup fee that has been based on 137 locations. How did we get to the 137? In March of 2020, previous members of the facilities team provided a value statement wherein we identified all of the site locations and their value for the property, as well as the value of the items contained in the building to assist us in obtaining property coverage. The number of sites was based off of that report. In having conversations with our new COO, we recognize that the number will be reduced, possibly to less than 100 sites, which will mean the overall cost for the setup will go down. So the cost overall for this service will be $14,740 based on the current number of site locations. The amount has been budgeted by the CFO and is available currently in the risk management account. This concludes my presentation. I'm happy to entertain any questions related thereto.
Attorney Robinson, I just wanted to thank you for being so thorough and answering all of the questions that were listed for you.
Thank you so much.
Board members, are there any other questions? Did you have something?
Just one. Attorney Robinson, I saw that we'll be the first school district in Mississippi to use these services. Did we get any references from any of the other school districts, the 400 or so nationwide that use this service?
No, sir, we did not seek references from the other school districts throughout the nation utilizing the service. However, we did have, I believe the city of Jackson uses the service, if I recall, based on my conversations with the South Group, but we did not seek any specific references from other school districts using the service.
Okay, do you think it would be a good, maybe, well, if the city of Jackson recommends, I'm comfortable with that because that's comparable in terms of a similar large employer. If anytime we go out and bring in a new service like this, I think checking our reference, particularly of another school district, to just see what the experience has been would be a good practice.
Thank you, Dr. Seaback. I will certainly note that going forward.
Okay, thank you.
My apologies.
Board members, are there any other questions? If not, Attorney Robinson, you can move on to item C.
Thank you so much. The Office of the General Counsel recommends that the Board of Trustees adopt its recommendations related to the following policies. Policy EFB, which would be a new policy titled Application Usage Policy. It is a policy that is recommended by the MSBA Policy Service. The new policy is regarding the requirements of a contract or agreement to be in place before software such as apps can be used within the district. This policy also provides the definition of an app and the requirements to notify parents of any third-party provider that is being used in the educational process. The policy is needed to provide explicit guidance regarding the incorporation of third-party services in the educational program for the district. Additionally, it affords the district enhanced protection against the misuse of student data by enacting a framework that requires a written agreement. The second proposed policy is policy EM. This would be a new policy. It is required under federal law, and the policy is required pursuant to the Asbestos Hazard Emergency Response Act. The last policy is an amended policy, but the amendments relate to some legislative requirements. The policy is GBRL, Drug and Weapon-Free School and Workplace. And the amendment addresses the district's position regarding the possession of weapons by employees on school property. The recommendation to include the amendment in this policy will allow the board to, or the district to remove board policy GACO, as it will be duplicative. And we chose to put it in the weapon and drug-free workplace space instead of GACO because it's more comprehensive. And it could include not only the new requirements related to whether or not employees could have weapons in the school, but also the obligation to have a drug-free school zone and workplace. This concludes the presentation related to the policies. I'm happy to entertain any questions related thereto.
Board members, are there any questions?
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Attorney Robinson. Now we're moving on to information action items. Ms. Miller.
Great evening, Ms. Johnson, Dr. Green, members of the board. I present to you the monthly financial report for the month ended September 30, 2020. This report contains your statement of fund balance, your bank, your budget status report, your bank reconciliation report, and also your district maintenance cash flow report. Just to bring some notes, we have begun a new quarterly review, and we reviewed the first quarter, which is of course at the end of September 30. And just want want to give you some information on especially district maintenance. As far as revenue is concerned, we're at about 15.7% of collections compared to 18.36% of collections at this point last year. One thing of note is that as we went through the budget process, of course, we talked extensively about MAEP, which is the majority of where our dollars come from, along with ad valorem taxes. And just as a note, this time last year, we actually received an MAEP allocation, which is our normal allocation. We also were receiving a separate allocation for the teacher pay increase. So this year, the large difference in MAEP collections is about $1,048,000 that we collected from July through September 30th of last year for the teacher pay raise, which was separate from MAEP. This year, all of that is rolled into one. So of course, we lost about $8 million total on MAEP for the year. So that's one of the largest differences there. As far as expenditures are concerned, we're at about 18.11% of district maintenance expenditures as a percentage of budget, which is a little in line with, was a little less than where we were last year. We were at 18.67% of budget and about 17.81% of budget in 2018. Of course, this is not the time that we will receive the majority of our revenue. We will see the majority of our revenue come in the next quarter of, the third quarter of the year, which is January through March. So we will significantly see increases in our revenue collections at that point. We are making sure that we are aligning our expenditures with the budget. And of course, where we would like to be is somewhere around under 25% at this point. So we are pretty much in line with where we have been in the previous 2 years. So this is your financial report for the month ended September 30, 2020.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Board members, are there any questions or comments? If not, is there a motion to approve information action item A?
So moved.
Dr. Luckett has moved.
Second.
Ms. Hilliard has seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? There being none, the motion is approved. Thank you again, Ms. Miller.
Thank you.
Moving on to information action item B, Dr. Cormack.
Good evening, Board President Johnson, Dr. Green, and members of the board. The administration is recommending the approval of a 3-year contractual agreement between Power School and Jackson Public Schools to support the adoption of a human resource management and professional development system. This is a platform that will be used for applicant tracking, employee records, and professional learning portals that will be hosted on this site. As part of our district strategic plan commitment number 5, a culture of accountability and excellence, we believe that this is a smart move that will take us into use of technology that will improve our operational responsiveness to our team members, which is an important part of that goal. As was mentioned this evening in Dr. Merritt's presentation, data quality is an ongoing effort and improvement in the district connected with Accreditation Standard 2.1. And this coordinated data quality effort includes our employee records and all aspects of the JPS employee experience. And so we're excited to be presenting this to you this evening. A key initiative of our commitment, of course, is to develop these structures that will be more efficient and responsiveness will be improved. And so currently we utilize a paper-based human resources system, which requires multiple sign-offs and approvals. And so we are looking to improve the efficiencies of those processes so that we don't lose applicants as they begin that process with us and that it navigates through the system. So this will actually allow us to streamline our processes as we move that forward and to coordinate the workflow so that there are fewer stops along the process. Additionally, all aspects of employee experience, including discipline and our employee evaluation, as well as employment history, the visibility of salaries will be things that will live within this system. So we're excited to present this. They were the winner, the selected vendor, as part of an RFP process, proposal 2020-17. Two other vendors submitted proposals in response, but they were the strongest in meeting all of the specifications of our request for proposals. As well, we did do outreach to other districts in the state. Oxford School District and Greenville utilized this system, Greenville School District, as well as several strong recommendations from other school districts nationally, including Savannah Chapman School District in Georgia, College Station Independent School District in Texas, and Los Angeles Unified School District, one of the largest school districts in the country, who also offered favorable recommendations. I'm happy to entertain any questions you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Cormack. Board members, are there any questions, comments? If not, is there a motion to approve information action item B?
I so move.
Ms. Hilliard has moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Dr. Sivak has seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? There being none, the motion is approved. And now we have Ms. Marshall Thomas.
Good evening, President Johnson, board members, Dr. Green. First, I apologize for not being able to share my camera. The administration is recommending approval of the amended memorandum of agreement between the Jackson Public School District and Tougaloo College. The purpose of this amended agreement is simply to replace in the MOU the name of the early college program, formerly the Michelle Obama Early College High School program at Tougaloo College, to its new name, the JPS Tougaloo Early College High School program. There are a few reasons that we, JPS and Tougaloo, proposed to rename the Early College High School program. First, the Early College program has officially transitioned from a pilot program, as specified in the first MOU, to an approved formal program by the Mississippi Department of Education. Secondly, as a rebranding and relaunch strategy, we, JPS and Tougaloo, took this opportunity to rename the program with a name that represents both the district's and college's longstanding reputation and rich tradition of excellence in education and commitment to students in Jackson. We feel that the name symbolizes a closer partnership and commitment to a more sustainable and long-term partnership. The process for the name selection was as follows. At the end of the 2019-2020 school year, a group of student leaders and faculty engaged in dialogue and conversation with Tougaloo's president, Dr. Carmen Walters, to discuss the vision of Tougaloo and the Early College High School program and the name change proposal. Two names emerged as the front runners: Tougaloo JPS Early College High School and JPS Tougaloo Early College High School. Amid the discussion, the students shared that the suggested names would clarify that the early college program is a partnership between JPS and Tougaloo, and it is a JPS affiliated program. They shared that the name change would easily recognize the program as a program within JPS and not an independent Tougaloo High School. All entities believe that the name change would capture and honor the long-standing history and traditions associated with both organizations. The students voted, and the JPS Tougaloo Early College High School program was the prevailing winner. And this concludes our presentation for information action. Are there any questions at this time?
Thank you, Ms. Marshall Thomas. Board members, are there any questions or comments? If not, is there a motion to approve information action item C?
Madam President, I so move.
Second.
Second.
Mr. Figurs moved and Dr. Luckett seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any nays? There being none, the motion is approved. Thank you. Next, we have the consent agenda items, finance. All the consent agenda items finance have been reviewed by the board previously. We've had an opportunity to ask questions of the administration. Are there any further questions, board members? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda finance?
So moved.
Dr. C.
Second.
Is moved. Hilliard is seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? There being none, the motion is approved. Next, we have the consent agenda items general. All of the consent agenda items general have been reviewed by the board previously. We've had an opportunity to ask questions of the administration. Are there any further questions? If not, board members, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items general?
So moved.
Second.
Dr. Luckett has moved. Mr. Figurs has seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any nays? There being none, the motion is approved. Thank you. Next, we have the consent agenda items personnel. Again, all of these items have been reviewed by the board previously. We've had an opportunity to ask questions of the administration. Are there any further questions? If not, board members, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda personnel?
I so move.
Second.
Ms. Hilliard has moved. Dr. Sivak has seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any nays? There being none, the motion is approved. Is there a consideration to hold an executive session? If there is not, okay, I'll give you. Okay. If not, is there a motion to adjourn, board members?
I so move.
Ms. Hilliard has moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Figurs has seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any nays? If not, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everybody. Thanks.